you accept me for who I am. That's quite something, isn't it, to someone
I don't think
who's...
she did. Honestly, I don't think she
Why?
did,
Why?
Alice.
Why?
Because she didn't know who he was. She was projecting something
She
onto
was
him, and
getting to
I
know
get,
him. She was
but there
getting to
wasn't
know him,
much.
and she liked what she was getting to know. She was just
But
horrified that he killed his family, right?
this is the point, right? He never had
Mm-hmm.
that contentment until Shanann. And it was that contentment that made it possible for him to get himself into shape and to come
Right.
across okay to someone
Yeah.
like NK for a while.
Yeah, I disagree. What do you mean for a while?
Because my point is
When you
that she
say
would have got
for...
bored of him eventually because it wasn't really there.
Right. You
It's just a
think that she was just interested in a guy who looked good and had, you know,
he
good
fit the
daddy,
role.
doting daddy. She
He
was just
fit
sort of...
her fantasy image, yeah, and she would be
Was it a
projecting
fantasy?
more. Yeah,
Was it a
of course it is.
fantasy? I think
It's
you know,
Alice.
I think it was a reality. I think she
Alice.
found her reality.
It's always a
What's a
fantasy in the beginning.
fantasy? This is
It's
very
all.
interesting. Carry on. Yeah.
It's
Is
always a.
it? So
It
are
wouldn't.
you saying that if you fall for a fantasy, it will not be reality? Is that the point you're trying to make? That if it's a
No,
fantasy, it's will not become a reality? Because yeah, all
no,
right, Chris Watts
that's
could
not
have
what I'm
been
saying at all.
NK's fantasy. What are you saying then?
I'm saying at the beginnings of any new exciting relationship, it's
Yeah.
always an element of a fantasy in there
Yes, I
because
agree
you
with you.
cannot help but project
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Because
right?
it's what you're looking for. It's what you
But
want. Yes.
yes, but
Yeah.
in the good outcomes, both
Right.
people live up to that fantasy to each other to some
Correct.
degree, and then you're in love, right?
Yeah. Correct.
But my point is that
Mm,
NK would have realised that he wasn't her
right.
fantasy.
That's where we disagree then. I was talking about Carl Gustav Jung and the wisdom of the dream, and a friend of mine I spoke to today was telling me about their dream,
Mm,
and so of course I had to go, and it's inspired me to
mm,
to to do a little bit more, bit of reading and a bit of watching of all things Jung, and
mm,
what a wonderful man, a wonderful gentle soul. I kind of relate to him because he spent his childhood, much of it in solitude, alone, and he'd play on his own and walk in the woods on his own. Not through sort of any neglect or anything. He's just a very solitary child, and
he chose to do
in,
so, right?
yeah, yeah, and he just liked to think a lot, and um, one of his I read that he said that because he thought so much and contemplated so much, that he knew things, he felt he knew things that others didn't know or didn't want to know. I thought that was really interesting, you know.
What
I
through
think it
the experience
suggests
of suffering? Do you mean?
not wanting to face things. That's how I read it, that's how I interpret it. He knew things that others didn't know or didn't want to know, right?
Yeah,
How
but
would you interpret that?
yeah, what I'm getting at is how did he come to that understanding that he thought he knew things that other people didn't want to know? Is it because he has to have had certain experiences, right? Whether it's through solitude, like
Yeah.
you say,
Hmm.
or was there some suffering in there as well? Because
I'm interpreting it as, sometimes people don't want to talk about things, do they? That they're uncomfortable or they're too deep, they're too private, they're too secret. they're too revealing if people dig deep with things. It's a bit uneasy, isn't it? It's a bit unnerving. That's how I interpret it.
It's almost, yeah, it's kind of like the switch to true crime there in a way, right? There's certain things that people don't want to talk about regarding true crime, and
Absolutely.
that's something that we've talked about a fair bit, like offline and things, right? Is
Yeah.
obviously it's a lot easier to talk about things which might in public have the risk of being a little bit too far, right? But
Controversial.
because they're dark, right? Or because it's actually fascinating. And our
It's taboo, isn't it? It's taboo. We're not supposed to talk about things taboo or distasteful, right? Can be considered distasteful sometimes.
mm,
I don't mind though.
yeah,
I'll
but
talk about anything.
there's no point in talking about true crime, I think, if you do have interests in those types of things that we've discussed, right? If you're not going to bother talking about those things, there's no point in bringing it up as a topic, really,
Yeah,
because
yeah. To just talk about the gruesomeness and diabolicalness of the crimes is it's not enough, is it? You've got to look at the big why. Why
mm,
do these people, in particular serial killers, who not only just kill once, they kill over and over again. That's
mm,
the biggest why for me in true
mm,
crime. It's why, and you scratch the surface of any of that, and you find all sorts of things. You find brutality and neglect and abuse. And
mm,
people, you know, I think people are uncomfortable and uneasy talking about those things. It's quite tough going sometimes, isn't it? I mean, to talk about sadism and necrophilia, which is predominant in serial killers, it's considered distasteful, maybe, right? Do you think?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
kind of have to be sort of,
especially if you're talking about certain true crime cases that may be quite high profile, then
and
that
considered
can be
disrespectful to the victim a little bit,
disrespectful
isn't
to
it? Yeah, that
the
kind of
families
stuff.
and things. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. I
but but
know.
e- but even regardless of that, if you're talking about an old case that includes things like that, with serial killers, then I think a lot of people still would find it reasons to object to that.
Yeah,
I just think you have to get past that point, right? If
yeah, yeah,
you know, um, either move away from it or delve further if you choose, right? It's
yeah.
just everyone has a choice. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the psychological aspect, the psyche and the soul. You know, um, again, I think it's quite controversial to sort of go down the path of having not sympathy for these serial killers, but some sort of um, pity and a little bit of compassion, because ultimately, to me, they are wretched souls. They're so tortured. They're so wrong, aren't they? It's so
Mm.
wrong what they do. But you've got
Mhm.
to be immensely disturbed, right? You've got to be immensely disturbed to want to decapitate someone, kill, decapitate them, bury them, dig them up,
Mm.
have sex with them, bury them again, dig them up, go back another day, dig them up, have sex with them. That's you've got to be. There's something very, very wrong, isn't there? You're a very, very sick human being,
Yeah.
right? And of course, I mean sick in the diabolical sense, the grotesque sense, but sick also as in being, you know, in need of help if that's possible. And that's what
Mm.
I would like to explore. Is it
Yeah.
possible to help someone like that? Is there a
Yeah.
point in their lives, when all this stuff, all these dangerous thoughts, this disturbing behavior
Foreboding.
is manifesting, you know, is there any point in that path where you can offer help, or they can ask for help, you know? It's
I think hypothetically there has to be, yeah. I mean,
I like to think so. I like
yeah.
to think so, but
It's just almost it's almost too unlikely that it could happen, but
I
hypothetically
know,
it could.
I know, I know,
Because whatever
because
caused some of these people to do some of the things you just described, the amount of damage that's occurred in their, you know,
yeah,
them growing from a child to a man is just
yeah,
deep, isn't
where,
it? It's very, very deep, and it's all got to be familiar, all
yeah,
related to family issues and things, almost in all
yeah,
cases, right?
yeah,
Mothers, fathers, neglect,
yeah,
you know.
abuse, brutality, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But that's one big question for me. Um, is and I think you can only find this out from those serial killers by researching them, whilst they're in incarceration, to pose that question to them,
Hmm.
pose the question to someone like Emil Kemper, Kemper, serial killer.
Hmm.
Um, was there any point in your life, when this was all manifesting, that you could have asked someone, if the possibility was there for
Hmm.
you to be able to go to someone, do you think, with that knowledge, you would have had the courage to go and tell someone
Oh, you
about the
mean from their
things?
point of view?
Yeah,
Yeah, from their
yeah,
point of view.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Do you think you would have been able to do that, find the courage to do that, to go and ask someone and tell them about what you're feeling, your dangerous thoughts, your this these impulses building within you? That's one question. And the second question would be, and do you think anything could have helped you? And if you do, what would it have been? Right? I think that would be such an interesting question to ask, these serial killers who have spent, you know, many, well, their life without parole, aren't they, serial killers? If not, if they haven't been executed, it's life without parole. And yeah, I just think that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Well, it is fascinating. Let me ask you another question.
Hmm.
I'm starting to sort of visualize it as being like a dam, or the Great Boulder Dam.
Hmm.
Um, this dam that is building up within their psyche, and with all these serial killers, that dam eventually bursts, and then
Yeah.
it's like a tsunami, right, that comes
Mm.
through, and then they do what they do consecutively.
Yeah.
Do you think it's actually quite a fine line between that dam ever breaking or just staying as it is within some pretty damaged people that just never happen
Yeah.
to cross the line,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Other
Yeah.
people walking around
Hmm.
right now, and people that have walked around in the past that had those same dams of emotion and torment and damage, but
Yeah.
the dam never broke because it is, in essence, a thin line, right?
Yeah.
From being one day someone that has not killed or raped to
Yeah.
then in the next nanosecond you have done that and there's no turning back,
I know.
right? The dam can never be put back together, right? The water's gone.
Yeah.
It's
It's
flowing.
full flow. Yeah. It cannot be stopped once it's started. Yeah. Logic tells me, yes, that there is people, you know. Um.
Key
There's
question
got to
is, yeah.
there's got to be,
Um,
hasn't there? How would you ever know, right? You can't prove it because no one's going to admit that they are a potential serial killer. But
yeah,
logic tells me that, yeah, I think people
because the
people
like put it
harbor.
put it this way, like the kind of suffering, right, that
Mm,
you described Ed Kemper went through in his youth, or Ted
mm-hmm.
Bundy would have went through in his youth. You know, the
Yeah.
thing about not knowing his mother was his mother and things, thinking his
Mm-hmm.
mother was his sister,
Yeah.
and she had to hide his birth and things. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's undoubted that numerous people have suffered similar experiences. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, those are just the sort of the tip of the icebergs in those cases because there's many other events that have occurred, right, that make each one of them totally uniquely
Mm-hmm.
individual, right?
Yeah.
So you can never make it a comparative sort of hypothetical experiment in that way.
Yeah. I agree.
But but the point still stands, right? You know, I'm sure, right, you could find some people that had suffered more in life than Ted Bundy
Mm-hmm.
did
Yeah.
and Ed Kemper did,
Mm-hmm.
but that dam never broke.
Yeah.
And what
Yes.
was it that helped them to overcome that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And I also think it's dependent on the character that you are, because I do believe everybody is unique and everybody is, your personality is as unique as your DNA, right? Your face is unique, right? Even though we're human, we have two eyes, a nose, and a mouth. There's no two faces that are the same, right? You're utterly unique. So I think
Yeah.
where the personality is unique, that determines how things manifest, how you deal with things, how you respond to things, how you conduct yourself. It's that concoction, isn't it? That concoction is unique, right? You, yeah, you can say Kemper and Bundy are serial killers, but they're two totally different people, right? With totally different experiences and
Yeah.
totally different ways of being, right?
Hmm.
So that it is it a difficulty to define things? Mm, not if you look at the individual, it isn't,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
If you delve into the individual, and I think you can pull so much information from an individual that will be useful to the study of psychology and the psyche and the soul and all of those things. I think that will be a useful study for mankind,
Hmm.
but the study is about the individual, right? It
Yeah.
will
Yeah.
impart greater understanding of,
Yeah. Hmm.
of those things I've just said, but they will come from individual beings. And I think it's important to recognize that you are as unique as your DNA. DNA is
Hmm.
amazing, right? It's amazing in crime. You know, if they've got your DNA, they've got you, right? That's
Hmm.
how specific it is,
Yeah.
right? And it's so complicated, right? DNA, you just, to look at it and think, right, that each little bit of data, when you look at
Hmm.
DNA, is specific to an individual. It's unique, right?
Hmm.
So if just imagine how complicated the psyche is of just one human being. If
Hmm.
that too is utterly unique, right? Of
Yeah.
course, there are things that bind us, right? Things that we can relate to, right? But the whole concoction of the personality is unique, isn't it? That's what I find
Yeah.
fascinating, um,
Yeah.
and, and that's
Totally.
why I want to dig really deep, into Kemper and into Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. You know,
Mm.
that those
Unique
yeah,
cases, uniquely extreme cases.
yes, yeah, yeah. You're right.
I
Um,
think you can. Yeah. I mean, I think by just studying some pretty diabolical and uniquely extreme cases of people going wrong,
mhm,
it doesn't have to lead, torture your soul in some sense, almost in the way that Jung was mentioning there in that quote, right? I think you can.
mhm,
I think it can be studied in interesting things can be learned that are quite modest in terms of just helping some people with rather more modest issues or problems, just by understanding.
Hmm.
It helps you to understand the more modest problems that almost every one of us has,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, I so wish that Jung was around now. You know, he was so advanced in his thinking. He was such a forward thinker. You know, he.
Did he, like, I came to know about Jung through Jordan Peterson, right? Because of
Hmm.
he would talk about him a lot, and he shared a lot of his ideas regarding archetypes and things. I know that's
Mm,
not what we're talking about here, right?
no,
But
but it kind of is because Jung was
yeah,
into the archetypes, wasn't he?
maybe, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The,
absolutely.
the archetype
Yeah,
of the monster. But
yeah.
so did Jung ever show any interest in looking into investigating the extreme in
Well,
terms of serial killers and things?
no, well, he was born in 1875, died in 1961. So that's what I mean. He looked into the deep, dark depths of the soul, in terms of studying the unconscious and the archetypes. He's very philosophical, spiritual subject. He's into astrology. It was just looking into that sort of the deeper side of human being, right? And
Hmm.
deep contemplation and looking at the torturous soul, and how things can manifest. But he was way ahead of his time then, but
Hmm.
he wasn't around. He died in 1961, so
Yeah, I suppose you keep
he
forgetting how modern the whole idea of serial killers are, aren't
I
they? They
yeah,
are a modern phenomenon.
yeah, I mean, I think they've always been around, but the term serial killer
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I mean.
only sort of I think the term was coined in late sorry, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. That he would have been fascinating, right? I would have loved his viewpoint on someone like Kemper and Bundy. I'd have loved a situation where he would interview them, and
Mm,
analyze them, right?
mm,
Do all this behavioral, even behavioral science came into being
mm,
as part of the FBI, sort of late 70s and 80s. It's
yeah,
very modern, really.
yeah,
When you
yeah. I mean,
consider that these grotesque people have been around since Dot, right? I
mhm.
presume. I'm sure they have. So people
Well,
have
they have.
always murdered, haven't they? Right?
Yeah,
They've always.
there's always been Jack the Rippers in existence, right? But
Mm,
they just didn't have access to be able to do any sort of case studies, or there just wasn't any access
exactly.
to knowledge of what was going on with all these. They were
Exactly.
more obscure, because
Yeah.
the scientific investigation didn't exist back then, and
Hmm.
there's no interviews, right? There's nothing taped to investigate. There's no one was writing books as such, looking into
Right.
their past and trying to. Things back then.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all very modern. The last sort of I don't know, 60 years, when it's really, people have
Mm,
really found value in studying psychology. And in terms of crime, even more modern. I'd say the last 40 years, right? It's very
mm,
modern science, but utterly fascinating.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I can't get enough of it. Yeah, so yes, that's one of my big questions that I've
Mm,
arrived at in my I mean, I've been into true crime for 44 years, that journey has arrived with my interest being focused on really peeling back those deep dark layers, you know
mhm,
and I've arrived at two questions, which I said earlier. Was there a time, Mr. Serial Killer, was there ever a time in your life, looking back, reflecting back on your life, where if you felt this stuff manifesting in you, these dangerous thoughts, these horrible feelings, this compulsion building in you, was there a time when you could have asked, do you think you could have asked for help? That's
Mm.
question number one. And question number two, do you think you could have been helped? And what do you think that would have been?
Well, to
What it
me,
what
in reality, the answers to both those questions are no, because the facility just didn't exist. So that they never would have
yeah, but
told
what if
you that they felt they could have.
yeah, but
So it has to be
that's my hypothetical question is,
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
there was a facility, would you have gone and asked? Would you have gone and asked for that help?
I think
And
they probably would have
two,
done.
yeah, I'd love to know. And two, Mr. Serial Killer, tell me, what do you think could have helped you? What sort of help, therapy, action? What is it that could have helped you?
God, yeah, I mean, it would be the extreme equivalent of, rehabilitating from drug dependency in some form,
Yeah,
delving into the reasons why they can't stop
yeah,
the addiction, because
yeah.
addiction is the big key factor when it comes to serial
Mm,
killers that you don't get in the other cases. That because it's funny just listening to you describing this, and I'm just starting to notice that I've been more since up until we started kind of delving a bit more into this, right? I've
mm,
always not really been as interested in the serial killer types. It's always been,
mm,
and I guess it's just an accident of the fact that there's a lot of modern, good quality footage of things like the kind of one-off killer, right?
mm-hmm.
The Jodi Arias,
Yeah,
who um, was definitely psychologically warped, right?
mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
in a completely different world from the kind of people you've been mentioning there, right?
mm-hmm.
She had a lot of damage going on, definitely in her past, I would say, right? That led her to
Yeah,
be not the as perfect as she might want to be, right? But
mm-hmm.
I believe that if it wasn't for some very, very unique circumstances in the last 2, 3 years of her life, she would never have killed anyone, ever.
Yeah,
And the same with Chris
yeah,
Watts. I
yeah,
really believe that with Chris Watts as well.
yes,
And there's many other examples. It's always been those kind of one-off moments of something just. What's interesting to me about that is it's potentially someone that would have been an otherwise one of everyone that would have just blended in to
yeah,
society is maybe being seen as a little bit odd, but just perfectly socially acceptable, right?
yeah,
Something took them from that into
yeah,
being capable of killing, right? It's the fact that they were capable,
yeah,
and it's even more extreme in Chris Watts's
mm,
case because of what he did, right, to
yeah.
his whole family,
I know,
his
I
kids.
know, I
Because
know.
I truly believe he wouldn't, if his unique circumstances hadn't occurred,
Mm. So
he
do
never
you
would have killed, right?
think, yeah, I agree with you, but do you think he entered into some sort of madness? I mean, yeah, obviously he did,
Yep.
but do you think there was a point that he crossed over? That he, because I personally think he had some sort of psychotic break, right? He
Hmm.
entered, and what, you know, psychotic break, I don't view it as, and I'm no expert, I'm just a novice with my own thinking, right? Psychotic break doesn't necessarily mean you foaming at the mouth and eyes bulging, right? Madness. It doesn't necessarily mean that, does it? It could be, like you say, a domino effect of these circumstances, one after the other, right? Bang, bang,
Hmm.
bang, that
Hmm.
take you to a point where you have this psychotic break. Do
Hmm.
you think that? Do you think,
Yes,
and I call that
absolutely,
madness. Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
do you agree with me that that is what occurred with Jodi Arias, right? Because a lot of people would hate hearing that, right? But
Yeah,
she was, I hate to say this, but
mm,
Travis Alexander was a bastard
yeah,
to her. right?
yeah. He used
He
her and
tortured
he
her.
abused her. Yeah,
He tortured her,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Now that doesn't mean that Jodi Arias wasn't a bit fucking crazy, right? Or a bit she had the seeds with which to grow into
Yes,
someone that was capable of the horrendous crime that she committed, right?
yes,
So that's still
yes.
true, but it's also still true that Travis Alexander tortured her, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
deliberately tortured her.
Yeah.
And even though she had those seeds, right, of in the right circumstances, right, with the right type of weathering and
Yes.
watering, made her capable of that. But if that hadn't occurred in those last 2, 3 years, she would have just been
Yeah.
an average, slightly arrogant, full of herself
Mhm.
American 30-year-old, that not a lot of
Yeah.
people got on well with, right? That's all she would have
Yes.
been.
Yes. Just someone a bit annoying, right? Yeah.
Bit
Yeah.
annoying,
Just quite
right?
a normal person. So, you know, so this comes back to the individual, right? So she had a set of traits that were potentially ripe for being triggered, right? Which draws me to the question, of course she is responsible, right? I'm not minimizing that in any way, shape, or form. She is responsible for what she did, and she's doing life without parole, right? That's correct, okay? But
Mm-hmm.
but what we're discussing here, this really difficult question, can
It's
any
the
of us be pushed? Can any of us be pushed to that point, right?
Well, none of us would like to say that, right? But it's probably
Exactly,
true. It's probably
exactly.
true that
Excuse
75
me.
to 90% of people, under the
Mm.
right circumstances, right, under the right memories
Horrific
of,
breeding ground, yeah? Horrific
yeah,
breeding ground.
that's what's so fascinating about these particular cases. I'm getting
Mm,
more fascinated now, with the extreme cases, the serial killers, right?
mm,
You've got me very interested in that, right? But it's for
yeah.
slightly different reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
both are just as fascinating. And
Yeah.
what's particularly fascinating to me, as I say, about the Jodi Arias and the Chris Watts is that, as I say, I'm probably repeating myself here, right? But the
Mm,
fact that they would have been so unremarkable otherwise, right, for those
yeah.
particular events, right, of a particular um,
Yeah.
time period,
Yeah.
which is
I
probably
know.
incredibly
I
unique,
know.
right, and very unlikely to happen to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you.
Because a lot of people think that Chris Watts, if he had gotten away with it, would have ended up killing NK.
I
There's
don't
not
think
a I
so.
don't think any
Not
chance of
not at all. I don't even
that.
think he realized, you know, I don't even think he knew what he was doing, to be honest with you. I think he just entered into some madness. I don't think any of it was planned. I think it was just a night of madness. I mean, nobody knows what really happened. I mean, he killed them, didn't he? He killed them and he disposed of them. But we, we don't know why. We don't know what tipped him
Well,
over the edge.
we can with what we know, some people know more than others.
Mm,
We can guess, right? I think
right?
he just wanted to erase the last so many years of his life because he he didn't. I don't think he actually loved Shannon for a second, right? He, um, when he first met her, he had
Hmm.
never succeeded in getting someone that looked aesthetically as good as Shanann, right? She kind of fit a certain mold for him.
Hmm.
Um, and he had been so like socially awkward and lacking of that sort of fulfillment in a relationship type setting that in a sense he was just playing the part in a film role and he was just delighted to go along for the ride because he never imagined in a million years that someone he genuinely liked and felt love for and lust for, like NK would be interested in him,
Yeah.
right? That concept just didn't enter his head. But of course, he managed to get himself looking in a certain shape that he allured
Yeah.
NK. I still don't really understand to this day what the hell NK saw in him, right? Other
Right.
than the kind of physical attraction that people talk about, right? But
Yeah.
he was never interesting. He was never going to be an interesting personality, right? He's interesting to look at for us, but he, like, a lot of people can't stand NK, right? I don't mind her. I think she's
Yeah.
quite interesting. She's an
Yeah.
interesting person.
I
She's
think
got
Chris Watts is
vitality.
interesting too. Yeah.
You,
I think
you
so.
wouldn't say he had an interesting personality though, right?
I
Chris
do.
Watts.
I do.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I do. I mean, we get this image of
Tell me
him that he's
more.
just a bit he's just a bit dumb, but I think with when he met NK, I agree with you. When he met Shanann, he was uninspired in life, right? I think his life he was an introvert. He was socially awkward, um, and
But
just
you didn't
happy to
know.
go along with life, just happy to go along with life. And when he met NK, right, something sparked between them, and she awakened, all his, his personality, right? She got his personality, I think, and she awakened him, not just sexually, but he really, they, I think they were perhaps not in love, but in lust when they first
Hmm.
met. And I think there was potential there for them to be in love. I think
Well,
people are really uneasy about going down that path. I think, yeah, that was
I
the
think part of
catalyst,
it
wasn't it?
I think part of it was that he was unattainable. That's what made him more attractive to her, right? And because he looked a certain part, right? Because when you first meet other people and they look the part, then
Mm,
you kind of project a sort of an almost a fantasy of your ideal sort of person that they are, right? And you forgive a lot of things, and you yeah, you project that they are this person you're looking for, right? Because every single person, I
yeah,
guess, is looking for the Romeo or Juliet, right?
yeah.
I just don't see him having an interesting personality at all. I
Well,
really
how do
don't.
you know? Neither of us know.
Just
It's
from
just our
well,
perception.
from everything I've seen
I,
of
th-
him, there's a lot
I
out
think,
there of him.
I think he was very secretive. I think he was very awkward, very secretive. He lacked confidence. He lacked the confidence to be himself. And I think NK gave him that confidence and he blossomed, right? You see those pictures where they're on the sand dunes and they're having their time together. There's quite a lot of photos, isn't there? And they do look, to me, they
Well,
look
you're
like they're
right, they
falling
do.
in love. They
Yeah.
look like they're falling in love, and falling in love is when you're really into each other. And I think I think she accepted him for who he was. That's my brief perception of it. It was a brief
Mm,
time span, right? I think she accepted him for who he was, and you know,
mm,
that's wonderfully liberating, isn't it? You accept me for who I am. That's quite something, isn't it? To someone
I don't think
who's
she did. Honestly, I don't think she
why
did,
why
Alice. I
why
just because she didn't know who he was. She was projecting something
she
onto
was
him, and
getting to
I
know
get,
him. She was
but there
getting to
wasn't
know him,
much.
and she liked what she was getting to know. She was just
But
horrified that he killed his family, right?
well,
I think.
I guarantee, right, if he had just done the normal thing, right, and just left Shanann, right, and went with NK,
Mm,
she was never going to stay with him. She would have got bored of him after a year, 2 years. I
do you
promise you.
think? Do you think? Perhaps,
Absolutely.
do you think this is your male perception and mine is my
Maybe,
female perception? Because I
maybe.
think they, if he'd have just left her and done the right thing, got a divorce, I think that he would have married NK and they'd have a couple of little babies by now. That's what I think.
And you
I
think she
think
would have
she,
stayed with him, do you?
yeah, I do. Without knowing, of course,
That's
we can never
interesting.
know. I
It is
do.
interesting that we may have different perceptions because of our genders,
Absolutely.
right? That's
Yeah, but
possible.
let's explore that. Let's explore that because I will perceive a woman. I'm a woman. I know another woman, right? You're a
Hmm.
man. You know another man better than a woman would, right? In terms of knowing a man and what he's about and his behaviour and all
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. And ditto with me observing NK, and I think she was ripe for settling down, for finding someone, and my perception is she'd found him. She'd found him.
She thought she found him.
Or yeah, obviously because he ended up being what
No, I don't mean that. I
doing.
don't mean that.
She
I'm
thought
just
she
saying.
found him, and you didn't think it would last.
No,
Is
no.
that what you're saying?
No, no. I'm saying she thought she found. She was at that stage projecting that onto him. He didn't possess those traits. Now, I understand when you say he had an interesting personality,
Mhm.
right? If anyone is interesting if you can drag it out them, right? But I'm just more talking about socially and
Right.
dynamically, right? And even in a relationship, I just don't think he would have been interesting to anyone, right? But
Right.
if you were capable of dragging out all his inner thoughts and demons and interests deep down, I don't know, plied on with amphetamines or something, right? He would be
Yeah.
interesting, right? Because every human being
Right.
is interesting in that
Right.
sense. But I
Yeah.
just mean more of what he was capable of being in any type of relationship or social setting. That's just my perception of everything I've seen
Fair
of
enough.
him.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but
My
here's the
perception.
thing. In
Mhm.
that, he's not unique. He's not
Right. Yeah.
alone in that. There's
Mhm.
many, many people like that,
Yeah. I
I
agree
think.
with you. I
And I
agree with
think
you.
NK would have just realised that he was just another one of them. He didn't live up to her expectations down the line, I
So
think.
what were her expectations?
Of her Romeo, right? I know that's a kind of
Mhm.
lazy term, right? But everyone's looking for their counterpart, right?
Yeah.
And he
And
looked the part, right? Because he was buffed up at that point, and there's a lot to be said that, he had a good profession.
yeah. Mhm.
They're all attractive things to
Yeah.
a single female at that age,
Yeah.
and he had a family, right?
Right.
And that, to certain types of females like NK, right? They can't help but find that attractive because it's a
Yeah.
challenge. Because he's shown also the fact that he was, to all intents and purposes, a good father, right? No one can
Oh,
deny
he
that he
was. He
looked
was
a good
doting
father.
dad. Yeah.
Okay?
Mhm.
So that would be
Yeah.
attractive to her as well, right? Because
Absolutely.
she's looking ahead,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
She wants her children and babies to be
Yes.
looked
That
after in that
of
way.
course that's appealing, isn't it? To have that in the bag, to know how he is as a father. He was a doting father. I've no doubt about that. So of course I think that contributed to her, you know, thinking that she'd found the guy. But I think the essence of their relationship, I agree with what you're saying, but to me that's surface stuff, right? What I see in their relationship is two individuals who were both a little bit sort of quirky and different, right? But in different ways. But I think they recognise that in each other, and I think they absolutely clicked, and I think they were in lust, about to fall in love. That's my perception of it. I think she was absolutely into him, right? Into Chris, his personality, his character. You
Don't have
know,
one.
I really do. And yeah,
Sorry.
this is interesting, right? Of
It
course,
is, yeah.
we'll never know. We'll never really know.
Yeah, I
But that
mean,
is my
we,
perception. Believe they both believed that they had found one another.
he certainly did, and I agree she did.
Mhm.
As I
Yeah.
say, it was a projection from her part, right? And there's nothing bizarre about that. Everyone makes a certain projection onto like a new,
Well, we were all looking for something, aren't we? We're all looking
yeah.
for our one ideal. And yes, I do think yeah, I agree with you in that sense that she'd found him. But I'm adding in extra, an extra layer, if you like, that
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 she knew exactly who he was. You're basically
she
saying that she
liked
knew
him.
who he really was and
Well,
she liked it,
she
right?
liked what she knew so far, right? It was
Uh,
quite a short relationship. Yeah, if
mhm.
we're to believe the timeline, they were together for a few months. You know, it's the first budding moments of a lustful relationship. But I thought there was going to be more to it. My perception is she'd found him and he'd found her, right? Which kind of makes the whole thing. Why didn't he just divorce, right? Yeah,
Well,
kind of makes it
because
even just.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know. I don't know. I don't.
but,
It's
yeah,
just.
I think it's interesting though that that is the difference. That's where our difference is, right?
Yeah.
Just to pinpoint it is the
Yeah.
fact that you think that she truly knew him and that was what she wanted, right? I
Right.
think that she found what she projected upon him and loved
Right.
that, but
Yeah.
she would have never found it. It would have faded, right? Because it wasn't there, and I think she just would have got bored of him. Simple as that, and
What
moved
wasn't?
on.
What wasn't there? What wasn't there?
The image that she projected onto him of being the kind of man that she wanted, right?
Which
That's that.
was? What was the kind of man she wanted?
Um, Someone with a personality for one, right? Someone like
Right.
NK could not. She would just get bored of someone, right? That didn't excite her in that way. The all the excitement would have come from the things that I mentioned earlier, and on top of
Right.
that, the projection. But like,
Right.
I've just it's been so long since I thought about this case, right? I think it's
Yeah.
probably the same for
Mhm.
both of us, right? It just came out of
Yeah.
nowhere there.
Mhm.
But just remembering as well, like one of the points I thought was quite revealing, a lot of people think is what pushed him finally over the edge, was the fact that when Chris went over to see her not long before it all went the way it did,
Right.
he found out that she was deciding that she was going to end it, and she had said that to one of her friends. Do you remember that? I don't know if that was completely confirmed, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Was it Charlotte? Was it Charlotte? She
Maybe.
was. No, but I think she was quite cagey, wasn't she? She was sort of yeah. I don't really. I can't really recall the details of that. But yeah, was that the rumor that she was being hesitant? Um,
Yeah, she was putting the brakes on, I think,
yeah. Well,
because
I
his
thought
lack of
she wasn't
ability
putting
to.
the brakes on. I thought she wasn't putting the brakes on.
Well,
I thought she was pushing him to make a decision. That's, I
uh,
mean, but
well, yeah, that's a good point actually. You're maybe right, yeah, and you maybe see that clearer as a female, right,
hmm
than I do.
um, yeah, I mean, we will never know, will we? I think she's started a new life somewhere. I don't think she'll ever write a book. I don't think she'll ever do an interview. So we're never going to know, are we? And even if she does, how do we know that's the truth, right? We can
Oh,
only just
yeah.
have perception of it. I think they'd found one another, and that might be
Mm,
quite controversial for
I don't buy it,
shiny
Alice.
shiny
I
people to
don't
hear
buy it.
stuff like that, right? But I do think that was what was going on. I think she liked him. I think she liked everything about him so far, right? And then it ended horrifically, didn't it? But no, it's interesting that you have a different perception of
It
what
is,
she was
yeah.
looking for and what she'd found
I
or
have
not
to,
found.
yeah, because I have to confess to you, right? I think something I realized about myself, right, is that I am more capable of perceiving things wrongly in females than I am in males. I know
Yes,
that as a fact, just
right,
looking through my history of my life, right? I know
right.
that.
hmm
I don't know, would you feel the same way in the mirror respect that you're
Oh, oh,
less capable of getting it wrong regarding females
um,
compared to males?
no, I'm a much better judge of females because I am a female. I know another female. I know what they're, I know what a female is about, right? I know how a female operates. I don't know how a male operates. Yep, so I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you that you Rabid, you will, you will, if we're observing a relationship, right? You know, say it could be any relationship. You're going to be able to relate, know, understand how the male works because that's your
Male.
species. You're a male, and vice versa, me with a female, right? So you know, your perception is going to be much more, I don't know if valid is the right word. I'm not trying to compete, right? But your perception will be much more key, right? Because you know what you're talking about. Yeah, because
Mhm.
you're a male. So you will know how a male operates, just as
Mhm.
I'm a female and I will know how a female operates. So
You
are
would agree
you
then that
asking
you're
me I could get it wrong with male perception? Are you
well,
saying that
your perception of males, you think you're more likely to get it wrong in your perception of males compared to females?
In theory, yes. In theory, yes. But I tend to.
Maybe you've overcome it. Maybe you've overcome that
Well, you see, I
balance,
see
that
people as
difference.
people. You see, this goes back to my own personal belief of looking at the individual. Right? I'm interested in the individual. What we're talking
So am
about,
I,
Chris
though.
Watts.
So am I.
Yeah, yeah. So
But you can't ignore the gender.
no, not at all. Not at all. I still um value my perception of people and individuals rather than male or female. Though I recognise the differences, of course, men and women are different, right?
Mhm.
Right? But those differences can overlap the gender, right? If we're talking
Mhm.
about the personality, the psyche, the soul, desires, you know, everything, right? Everything, they all
Mhm.
overlap, don't they? So when
Yeah.
I'm looking at NK and Chris Watts, I'm seeing I see two individuals, right? A man and a woman. I see two
Mhm.
individuals that are absolutely into each other and are about to fall in love. That is my perception, right?
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm not ignoring that he's a man and she's a woman. I'm not ignoring that, but my focus is on them as individuals.
it's kind of
It's
interesting,
it
actually,
is. It is.
because
It's two
no, no,
fascinating conversations, isn't it?
yeah. But what's interesting as well is the fact that you've kind of you've preempted and already argued against the argument I was going to make, right? Which
Right?
is that if you were like me, right, and you would share this sort of general, because it's obviously very general, right? I'm only
Mm-hmm.
making huge generalizations here. Of course,
Right.
I can get males wrong, and I can be a
Mm-hmm.
great judge of females sometimes. I think I'm a
Yeah.
great judge of Jodi Arias, right?
Yeah.
But that's a unique circumstance, right?
I
Because
think your
she's
perception
exposed. She's
is very
exposed,
deep.
right? In
Yeah.
that sense, right? So that's not a
Mm-hmm.
good example. But what I was going to say, right, is if you were like me and you erred more towards judging males less well than females, then perhaps you've got Chris Watts a little bit wrong in this perception, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to me getting NK wrong, right?
Right. Yes.
But you've kind of argued against it already, right? Because you're saying
Right.
you don't perceive that you have that slight bias, right, in your
I
ability
I
to perceive.
correct.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Correct. I think my own personal perception, as we all do, right? So I'm sounding arrogant now, but I do think my perception is correct. That
Teach me the
because
way.
we're never going to know, are we? All we can do, all we can work on is the information that we have. And in the short time they were together, I see something. I see two people about to fall in love. Of course, they're in lust with each other. They can't keep away from each other. But I just see this, you know, the way they look at each other, you know, the time, the intense time they spent together. You know, if we take the murder out of the equation, right?
Mhm.
We take the fact that he was married out of the equation. I see
Mhm.
two people who are absolutely about to fall in love. That's how I perceive it.
It's funny actually because if you'd taken the marriage out of the equation, She would never
Yeah,
have had that opportunity, right? For two reasons, right? Number one,
right,
he never would have got himself into the shape that he did if he wasn't married to Shanann,
right,
right? It's nothing to do with Shanann herself. It was just he was just happy to be fucking married, right? To someone that looked
right.
okay and to be living this what
Well, was he
he
happy though? Was he happy?
he
Obviously
was, right?
not.
He didn't no, but in that time he thought he was happy, right?
Right,
But
yeah. Mm-hmm.
what NK unearthed, right, was the passionate adolescent in him, right? That would always have aspired to a personality and a character
I
like NK.
disagree. I disagree.
Really?
I yeah, I think she
On what?
I think she awoke the man in him.
Well, that's kind of the same thing that I'm saying. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
when you say man, that is still birthed from the like when I say adolescent, right? I mean the
Mm-hmm.
passion. I don't mean the immaturity. I mean the kind
Right.
of
Okay.
the
All right.
passion of romance is what I'm talking about, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And primal urge. That's what I'm
Right.
referring to in
Okay.
adolescence, right? So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying, right? That she brought out the man
Mm-hmm.
in him. She did, right?
Yeah.
It was too deeply rooted for him that it would never have developed in the way that would have matched the excitement she was looking for, right? Once that
Right.
initial period wore off, right, it would have been gone. Like in regards to the marriage, right? If he hadn't been married
Yeah.
for those few years, he wouldn't
Right.
got into the shape to be aesthetically alluring to her. And
Right.
also the fact that he was married and had
Yeah.
kids, the challenge
Yeah.
of having that herself and taking him from that and having it for herself was part of the attraction.
Yeah.
If he was single at that
Mm-hmm.
point, he
Yeah.
never would have been attracted to her.
I
Never.
disagree. I
Well,
disagree.
I guess we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, well, let's agree to disagree. I think
He would have been a dweeb if he was still single at that point. He would have been a fat dweeb that couldn't talk to anyone
no, I disagree with you. I think he got himself well into shape before he met NK. I think he was
through the marriage. He did.
through well the thrive thing and all of that, and wanting to
Yeah.
look good for the camera and all of that stuff. Yeah, I think that was part of it, definitely. I think it was part of the image thing, but I think he also did it for himself. When he embarked on this
Mm,
renewing himself, getting into shape, I think he felt good. I think he thought, yeah, I'm going to
mm,
do
yeah.
this. I like this
Yeah,
me.
well,
I'm going to
he
do
was quite,
this.
but like I say, he was quite happy with Shanann. It's just a different type of scale to what he realized was
Yeah.
possible with NK.
Yeah, I think he was
And he was
content with
content,
Shanann.
exactly. He
He
was
was
content.
content, wasn't he?
Eh, but this is the point, right? He never had
Mm-hmm.
that contentment until Shanann. And it was that contentment that made it possible for him to get himself into shape and to come
Right.
across okay to someone
Yeah.
like NK for a while.
Yeah, I disagree. What do you mean for a while?
Because my point is
When you
that she
say
would have got
for
bored of him eventually because it wasn't really there. The interesting
what wasn't really
personality
there?
wasn't there.
What wasn't really there? His personality. I think he had personality. I think everyone has personality. I think she
We're talking about her perception here. I'm only talking about what would be attractive to her. I'm not saying he doesn't
right.
have a personality.
Right? You
It's just a
think that she was just interested in a guy who looked good and had, you know,
he
good
fit the
daddy,
role.
doting daddy. She
He
was just
fit
sort of,
her fantasy image, yeah, and she would be
was it a
projecting
fantasy?
more. Yeah,
Was it a
of course it is.
fantasy? I think
It's
I think I
Alice.
think I think it was a reality. I think she found
Alice.
her reality,
No, but it's
right?
always a It's always a
What's a
fantasy in the beginning.
fantasy? This is
It's
very
all.
interesting. Carry on.
It's
Yeah.
always. It's
Is
always
it?
it's
When
always
I fell
partly
in love,
a
when I fell
fantasy
in
in
love,
the
I fell
initial
in
stage.
love with my archetype, if you like. I fell in love with my dream, all right? But what I was falling in love with, yeah, yeah, in a sense, a fantasy prior to that, because I daydream about my perfect man. And when I met him and fell in love with him, he was a reality, right? And I
That's
think
because
that's,
he fit the fan. That's because he fit the fantasy for you,
yeah,
right?
because he
He lived
was the
up to it.
fantasy, because he
Exactly.
was the fantasy, right? And
Then
I
it was
think,
still a fantasy, right? So you're agreeing with me.
right, that
And then it
it,
became reality.
yes. So
It
are
wouldn't be.
you saying that if you fall for a fantasy, it will not be reality? Is that the point you're trying to make? That if it's a
No,
fantasy, it's will not become a reality? Because yeah, all
no,
right, Chris Watts
that's
could
not
have
what I'm
been
saying at all.
NK's fantasy. What are you saying then?
I'm saying at the beginnings of any new exciting relationship, it's
Yeah.
always an element of a fantasy in there
Yes, I
because
agree
you
with you.
cannot help but project
Yeah.
that,
Yeah. Because
right?
it's what you're looking for. It's what you
But
want. Yes.
yes, but
Yeah.
in the good outcomes, both
Right.
people live up to that fantasy to each other to some
Correct.
degree, and then you're in love, right?
Yeah. Correct.
But my point is that
Mm,
NK would have realised that he wasn't her
right.
fantasy.
That's where we disagree then, because I think that he was her reality, right? That's
Well,
and this is just our different perceptions. It's very
we need to put it to
interesting.
we need to put it to a vote. It might have to
Yeah.
be an anonymous vote, right? Because I don't know who would want
Yeah.
to vote this apart from you and I.
But this is what's interesting, right? Neither of us know, right? Neither of us know, okay? But we're
But we
quite
both think we know.
firm. But
We
we're
both think we
quite
know.
firm, aren't we? We're quite firm in our each of our opinions. That is
Yeah.
what's interesting about this conversation, right?
hmm Well, it's delving
Yeah,
into, and it delves into something that's beyond just Chris Watts and NK in a sense.
absolutely.
That's why true crime is
Absolutely.
interesting because it's a
Yeah,
mirror to our own lives and
absolutely.
what goes
I
on in
love it.
society.
This is what I want
Yeah.
to do. I want to peel back the layers and look at all this sort of stuff. Um, yeah, so now we're into the realms of perception, right?
hmm
Perception, you know? And I have this thought, right, that everybody lives in their own world, right? How do I know, right? We can agree on things, but how do I really know, other than you saying, yeah, I agree with you, that you
hmm
see and perceive what I see and vice versa, right? That can never be proven, can it? You know, you and I agree on so many things, and we say, yeah, I see it like that. Yeah, I perceive it like that. Right. And we're
hmm
agreeing in word, right? But
hmm
how do I actually know,
That
other
I
than
really
your
do
word, that you're
agree.
seeing what I see, right? What I see
Oh, I
in
see what
my
you
mind.
mean.
Yeah.
That we're agreeing on the
Yeah.
same thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, that only
Yeah.
comes through experience of having a dynamic with someone, right? And having an
Mm-hmm.
interaction with someone, then you can pick up whether
Yes.
it's more likely or not. But that's the only way you can really get it is through a kind of history, of
Yes.
a continuous dialogue with someone and getting to know someone, right?
Yes. The deep inner knowledge, right? The more you get to know someone.
But you're probably
Um,
right. You probably can't ever 100% know, but you can get pretty
yeah.
damn close, right? If
Yeah.
you have a history, as I say, right?
Yeah.
And a
Yeah.
good one.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I was just being a bit off the wall and a bit quirky, as I can be, thinking, how does someone know that how do I know that someone's seeing? Because when I have thoughts and I'm thinking about things,
hmm
my mind is like a film, right? I
hmm
imagine things in pictures, right? And I think, how do I know that someone
hmm
is seeing or perceiving what I'm seeing, right? And
Mm,
how do I, and vice versa, how do I know that you're perceiving the same as me, right? There's
yeah,
no official correlation, is there? There's only depth of depth of dialogue and
yeah,
experience and time and that deep soul stuff, right? If you've got
hmm
close friends, the closer you are to someone, you know, the closer the human relationship, the deeper the soul stuff, right? Where you
mm,
have certainty, right? If you spend 40 years with someone as your spouse, you don't even have to talk to each other sometimes. You
yeah,
just
totally.
know. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You just know. You know just the slightest turn of a body language, the slightest tilt of a head. You
Mm.
will know what all of that means, right?
It reminds me of a joke a comic that I used to know used to make. like just talking about the kind of cliche old couple sitting in a restaurant quietly,
Mm-hmm.
pensively looking at their spoons as their eyes are down at their soup, and they just
Right.
have nothing to say to each other. And he
Mm-hmm.
was like making this is the point then, please don't let me end up like those two, right? But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, like you say, they maybe don't have to be
Yeah.
in a rampant dialogue every minute of their life because they've spent 50 years together. They
I
they
know.
can read each other just through their
Yeah.
eye movement,
I
and their body
know.
language, and
Yeah.
th-
I think
there's
that's
maybe something.
wonderful.
There might even be
Yeah.
something a little bit cosmic where there's a sort of
Mm.
almost a twin connection, that develops where
Yeah.
there's this bond that maybe
Yeah.
develops, right? That'd be a nice thought.
That's
Maybe
beautiful
a little bit
thought.
of
Yeah. Yeah. I
telepathy,
like
right?
that. I
Telepathy.
like that. It's connection, isn't it? No
Yeah.
man is an island, right? Okay, and to we all want to love and be loved, and ultimately that ultimate love is a pure connection, isn't it? Where
Mm.
you are, I'm getting all fairish now. Where you are at one, right?
Mhm.
That's a beautiful concept, isn't it? When you are at one with someone.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's what fascinates me about the human condition, or one of the millions of things that fascinates me about the human condition is that connection you have with
Mm.
someone, right? And
Well,
this we
at the risk of
go.
being slightly mischievous, Enki
Hmm.
and Chris Watts would never have been at one.
Rabid, they already were one.
No, no.
That's yeah, I think so. I think so. I think he found her, and that's what makes this case so
Why did he care so much then that
bizarre.
he answer
Bizarre.
this answer this
Hmm.
then, right? If they were
Right?
really at one with each other, right? Why did it matter so much to him that rather than just have it publicly known that he had to leave his family and be the bad
Hmm.
boy that ditched his wife,
Yeah.
why why did he give a shit about that if he was at one with NK? Why did he have to try to erase them so that he didn't
I
have to
don't
deal
know.
with that
That's what I
public
mean. I
reaction?
don't know. I don't know why he
Because they
took
weren't at
that
one.
stance. Yeah, but killing his wife and children wouldn't have made them at one, right?
No,
Would it?
no,
So
exactly.
why kill them? This is what I mean. This is the curious case of Christopher Watts. That's how I view it. It is so bizarre, right? The
It
motive
is so. It's
is
still,
so
it's
bizarre.
so bizarre. And a lot of people start throwing their toys out the pram or having tantrums when anyone brings up the Chris Watts
I
case, right?
know.
But I
Yeah.
don't care about that. It's
No, I
still
don't.
interesting and it's still a
Absolutely.
mystery in so many
Absolutely. Yeah.
ways. I
It
mean, not
is.
so much, to me, it's not so much about the kind of the hows and whys of it, of how things happen, like whether he had sex with Shanann before or
Yeah,
not,
I'm not.
right? I'm
Yeah.
not
It's
so interested
yeah.
in stuff like that,
Yeah.
you
Neither
know?
am I. I'm interested in the characters, right? The characters, and for me, the characters in this case are Christopher Watts and NK, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I,
Unfortunately, Shanann is just not interesting.
correct,
It's a tragedy what happened to her, but she is
absolutely,
not an interesting person.
not in the slightest, I'm afraid. But of course, I have the same sympathy for her and her beautiful girls as I do for anyone who's been murdered. Of course I do. But in terms of delving deep into the case, she's not interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's all right to say that. For me, the dynamics of this terrible murder, the dynamics, to know why, or even begin to figure out what what his motive was, it lies with him and NK.
Yeah. Here's another example of me perceiving and getting it wrong with a female
Hmm.
in my, because I initially saw her so differently. Shanann, really
Yeah,
did.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate?
Not really, because I am
All right.
conscious that
I know. I
it
know.
is kind of,
Me
yeah,
too. I know what you're saying, Rabid. It's it's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Just
I
to be
guess
respectful of it.
there's not really any need, I guess, and
There.
sometimes we can't help it, but
I know. Yeah. I think it's just to be respectful to her. I don't think it's a question that there is an argument. I will say this: there is an argument that she can't defend herself. I don't think it's about defending herself. She doesn't need to defend herself, right? People will have perceptions of you. People will have perceptions of me and of you, Rabbit, and they've got every right to that perception,
oh,
right?
I've learned that.
Just,
I've learned
just,
that.
just as I have a right to have perception of what I see and how I saw Shanann, but I'm very aware of public fierceness, isn't there? That you're either pro this or pro that. You know what I'm saying, don't you? And I
Mhm,
don't want to get involved in that. What I'm talking about is shiners, right?
mhm.
Shiners and bashers. I'm neither a shiner nor a basher or anything in between. I just have my perception of things, my opinion of things, and at this point in time, they shall remain private-ish, right? And I
Would
think
you?
that's
Yeah,
that's
that's
quite
well.
dignified. Yeah,
That's well said. I chime
yeah.
with that, right?
We're on
And
the same page. I know
we
we are.
are, we are at last. Yeah,
Yes. So here we
we ha
are. Back. We had a,
we have been for most of this, right? We just differ on a very interesting aspect, right?
absolutely, and
But
we do. The thing with you and I, Rabbit, is that we agree on so much. We're absolutely, our values, our morals, our decency, all we're absolutely on the same page. But there have been times when we've totally disagreed, right? And I think that's why
oh,
we get on so
yeah,
well.
yeah,
You know,
we've had
we
rather
we
impassioned
argue well.
disagreements in the
Yeah,
past.
I know. They've been spectacular, haven't they, dear? But we're still good friends, aren't we?
Would
Right?
you? We are. Would you agree with me then that the Shiners
Mm-hmm.
represent a perfect example of what we've been kind of talking about a little bit, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
past on the few podcasts and things, right?
Yeah.
That they're a perfect example of the type of followers of true crime that
Mm-hmm.
take offence to ever delving into
Oh,
um,
absolutely.
the actual real nuts and
Absolutely.
bolts of what's going on with these
I,
characters, right?
I absolutely,
That's
yeah,
offensive to them
yeah,
and always
yeah,
will be. Not just in
yeah,
that case, right? But in any case.
yeah.
It's
I agree with you. My opinion of that sort of mentality is why are you even interested in true crime? Right? What is your interest other than to talk about the crime? Because for me, true crime is it's my hobby, right? I'm
mhm.
so interested in it. I'm so passionate about all aspects of it. That is what, for me, true crime is about. It is the most diabolical, the most terrifying, the most frightening, the most wrong things in human nature that fascinate me, right? I'm fascinated by all things beautiful and all things terrible. So, therefore, true crime is a subject that is, I mean, it is endless, right? It is
Mhm.
endless in your pursuit to explore the human mind, the human psyche, the human soul, the human behavior, the human condition, right? So
Yeah.
for those people that you know you've described, I
Mhm.
think, why are you into true crime?
I'll
You
tell you
make true
why.
crime boring, right?
I'll tell you, it is boring, and I'll tell you
They make,
exactly
yeah.
why. I'll tell you
Mhm.
exactly why it's boring, right?
Mhm.
Is that it's the ultimate form of virtue signaling. That's all they're
Oh,
really doing,
I know. I
right?
know.
They just want to
You're
be seen, to be a
well
part
done.
of the victimhood. That's
Well
all it
done.
is.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. All right. All right. Yeah, I just want to say to them, well done. Well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let's find people who want to have a proper conversation, proper discussion,
Yeah.
proper investigation, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I just don't see the
yeah,
point otherwise, really.
exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
people have to
It's
understand that they're always going to be abstract to these personalities and all these crimes, right? You can't get
hmm
too deeply connected to these people, right? They're
I
not you.
know,
You
I
are not them.
know, I know, and it's this, of course, it's terribly sad, right? You know, when I look at crimes and the actual victims and what's happened to them, especially if they're children, of course you want to cry. Of course you feel sad and depressed and horrified. But that when you start sitting and sobbing as if you knew someone, you need to go outside, get
You
a bit
need
of fresh
to,
air.
yeah, yeah. You need to take a stroll like Young did down the forest and just spend some time contemplating things.
Go and wander
And
in the
then,
woods and sit by
yeah,
a
then,
river.
yeah, just sit within nature for a while. Go and
I
maybe
know,
talk to a few people out in the
I
real
know.
world, and
Yeah,
then you might understand that you're not them, okay?
yeah,
And it's not really right or healthy
yeah.
to try and
Healthy.
swallow
Mhm.
the kind of pain that you perceive from them and their family members, right? You want to
Yeah,
own that pain. You want it for yourself
I
because you've
know.
got pain for other reasons.
Yeah,
That's why they want to be a part of it,
I
you know?
know. And I find that unhealthy and a little bit distasteful. I think
Yeah,
people need to get hold of themselves, all right? You don't know these victims, right? You express love for them that cannot possibly be, right? When you say you
cannot.
love X, Y, and Z, you don't, okay? You
Don't.
just don't. You have immense sympathy and compassion and all those feelings, right, which normal people do, but they extend it into this
Mm,
um personal virtue signaling, right?
yeah.
Do you think it
Eh,
makes them feel good? Do you think it
Yes.
makes them feel good? Well,
Yes.
that's what I find distasteful,
Yeah.
because
I know.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Get a grip, right? Stop
Yeah.
sobbing.
Distasteful
Get a
is the right
tear.
word.
Get a tear for the when we see horrific news, it can be deeply moving. I understand shedding a tear in that way, but when you sit watching stuff and you're sobbing, come
Mm.
on, you know
Like,
go
uh,
go hmm
to give you an example, I could easily use the word that I loved John Lennon, right? But I would know I
right,
wasn't meaning that I loved John Lennon.
right,
He was just a kind of hero to me, right? I
yeah.
admired him. I wouldn't talk about John Lennon now and break down in tears at his assassination, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand the abstraction.
hmm Yeah, I know what you're saying. I mean, I do use the word, I do use love and hate, but they're ways of expressing. I think I've said that I love Einstein. That's why I fell in love with him, because of the quotes I read out. I love Carl Gustav Jung, but it's not in that.
You're not
It's
trying to
not
own them, right?
tender. It's not, yeah, exactly. It's not a tender expression, right? It's a description to describe my liking, that I
Yeah.
really, really like. Instead of saying really, really like, I just say I love. But I don't have that tender emotion, right?
Mm,
And you see it in true crime community, right? Don't you?
mm,
And I will say it, particularly with Shanann, that they love her. They
mm.
love this person. No, you don't. No, you don't. You
No,
like her. You admire her, but this
they're.
is it's this expression of tender love
I mean,
that is it
what,
that is not real and that is distasteful,
and
right?
what are they loving, right? They're loving
Mm-hmm.
a victim, right? And it's the case with probably many, many cases, it's this sense of being in love with a victim. But unfortunately, just by the law of averages, the people that
Mm-hmm.
commit these crimes tend to be rather remarkable people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's obviously bad reasons, right?
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
victims, just by the law of averages, are just rather ordinary people,
Of
right?
course they are.
You're not loving them for their thoughts or ideas or anything they've really done, right? What you're trying to do is possess their victimhood. You want to share in that victimness, you know?
I
It's really
agree
weird
with
when you think
you.
about it.
I agree with you, Rabid, and I'm saying I agree with you because it is weird, right? It is weird. I want to say to these people, what are you doing? Right? What are you doing? Get a grip. Yeah? Get a grip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taking on. I will emphasize that it is distasteful because for example, if God forbid, one of my families, right, were involved in were the victim of a horrific murder, and it was high
Mm,
profile, and they had an Instagram and they had a Facebook, and people would pay their respects, okay,
mm,
which would be perfectly acceptable and nice and sad and
mm.
that's fine, isn't it?
That's
Then
all
if you've got
understandable. Yeah.
some group that started up, starting this adoration of them, I'd put an end to it immediately because
Mm.
I find it disrespectful and distasteful. You're using you're
Yes.
using a tragedy to express something within you that is not
Yes.
relevant. Stop it.
Precisely.
Stop
Precisely.
it.
That's
Yeah,
precisely what's happening. And
I
that's what is
know.
kind of selfish about it, you know?
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Which adds to this case of Christopher Watts. I refer to it as the curious, in my mind, my perception, my thinking, I see it as the curious case of Christopher Watts because of the bizarre motive. Right, I can't work it out. I'm good at working this out, but I can't work this one out. And attached to that is all this weird stuff, this virtue signaling, this
Yeah.
false passion, this false passion, this false emotion. I find it highly distasteful,
I'd slightly disagree with you there. I think that it is passion, but it's
right?
passion for themselves, right?
Yes,
It's their own
therefore it's
passion. Yeah.
false. To me,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
false, right?
Yeah.
It's fake, and it's this case is still going, isn't it? Case of Christopher Watts is still going.
Well,
Um,
hmm.
there's still interest in it. There's all kinds of bizarre behaviour related to it, right? Which we've just touched upon.
Oh,
Um,
something new came out, didn't it, about NK? Is that right?
I think it was her police
Interview.
interview with her father was there, right?
Right.
Her father was there, and we've all this has always been available along with all the other information that within the discovery. I think that's what it is. But this time it's been released with video, so we can see her.
Oh,
So
yeah.
before we could only hear her. Now we can observe her as well. We can observe body language and etc. Right, because it's a
Mm.
visual. But I've not been interested in that because I'm just not. I think I'm a little bit put off, to be honest with you, with all the bizarre nonsense, right?
That's
I want to
attached
look.
to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That's the exact word, Rabbit. There's all this attachment, this
Mm.
attachment to it. It's this stuff, this weird stuff, which I
Mm.
just not into. I want to discuss. I want to have a serious conversation with someone. Who wants to have
Mm.
a serious conversation with me. I don't want to be I don't want to be shouted at or cried at, right? That's not what true
Yeah.
crime's about to me.
Are you as interested in the Jodi Arias? Not so much the case of Jodi Arias, but the
Mm,
what we have from the trial of Jodi Arias and some of her interrogation. Are you as interested?
very,
Because I'd love to talk to you about that at some point. Maybe watching some of it, right? 'Cause
very
she
interested. Very interested.
fascinates me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who instilled in me renewed interest. I mean, I was interested at the time, when the trial happened, but it's quite some time ago, and I've got an extra. Um, I've got a different path of interest that I want to pursue. Um, so I'm hugely interested, and what I'm really interested in is her um, interviews in the police station, right? I think they're quite fascinating. I think they'd be
Mm.
quite good to dissect. Her
Mhm.
time on the stand with Juan,
Oh
right?
my god.
Amazing, amazing, right? And also,
Unbelievable.
I think she's done a couple of incarcerate. I'm very interested in these horrific killers. These people who have committed diabolical acts
Mhm.
who are now incarcerated, and their prison interviews. I'm
Oh yeah.
very, very interested in how they've adapted and
Developed.
where they're at
Mm.
as a human being. I have a huge interest in Ed Kemper, and I'd love to do something on Ed. He's
Yeah.
done many prison interviews. Absolutely
Mm.
fascinating.
The
Absolutely
way you
fascinating.
describe him is
Oh,
fascinating, you know?
he
Yeah.
is. He is. To see a criminal, who's committed these, he's a serial killer, right? Committed these absolutely grotesque acts. One of them, his mother, he decapitated her, did all terrible kinds of things to her,
Mm.
after he decapitated her, and to hear him, just to hear him speak in prison, right,
Mm.
about, and he's very honest, he's very articulate, he's very tormented, he's
Mhm.
very remorseful. To see him sitting there and talk about, what he did to his mother, and he cries, and I do believe his tears are real. You can
Mhm.
see the torment, and he's got that's his punishment, right? That's his
Mm.
punishment. I think when he gave this interview where he spoke about his mother, I think he'd been incarcerated for maybe 10 or 12 years,
Yeah. I was
around
just
about
about to
that
ask you
time.
that question. I was about to ask you that
Yes,
the one
yes, and he's
after it was.
tormented by it. He's tormented. The full realization of what he's done. He's tormented by it, and he cries when he speaks about her, at the horror of what he did to her. It's hard. You have to watch it. We'll watch it together, right? Sometime.
Mm.
It'll be absolutely fascinating. I've no doubt you will, have my thoughts, similar thoughts and feelings to me, in terms of being fascinated with just observing uh,
Yeah.
a tortured a tortured human being who
Mm.
has fully realized, because I think it takes a time, I think it takes many years to realize the full reality of what he's done, and you see this, and he's talking about it with such candor,
Mm.
and he's disgusted with himself, and he's tormented. He was incarcerated when he was 24, around about
Mhm.
that age. So this interview, I think he's early 30s, right? And I
Mm.
think he's approaching 70 now. That is a long, long time. He's
Yeah.
had to live with that. That's his punishment, right? That's
Mm.
his
That's real punishment.
that's his absolutely, that's his karma. That is his life. He has to live his life till he dies naturally, and he has to just live with it. And he
Mhm.
has lived with it.
It really
And
is the worst punishment. Simple as
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. And that's what fascinates me, right? And it also fascinates me you know, just to think, right, every morning he wakes up, goes about his prison life, right? He's quite productive. He sort of resumes some sort of, as a human being, he's resumed some sort of purpose to his life. And I think
Mm.
that's valuable. That's interesting. I love to know about that process. He's very, very academic. He's got a massive IQ. I mean, it's genius-ish level, right? It's right up there,
Just like Jodi Arias.
130-ish, you know? And yeah, I'm fascinated with that aspect, that how he manages to live every day. That's what
Mm.
I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And to know about his own personal redemption, because I do believe he has it.
Yeah, I think this is what's drawn my interest into these types of criminals, right? That you've
Mm,
kind of brought to me because, as I was saying, I've always kind of concentrated on the more seemingly normal ones, right? They commit one big
hmm.
act, and it's that
Yeah.
interests me. How someone invisible in life to have done what they've done, right?
Mhm.
But what you don't get in those situations is the prison interviews way down the line. It's all concentrated on the early parts of the interrogations and things when it's all about the deception, right?
Mhm.
It's like the other case that you're really passionate about and you've drawn my interest in is the Ted Bundy case, right?
Yeah.
What is unique to those examples of serial killers is that they,
Mhm.
yes, at one point they were in the deception period, when he
Yeah.
first got caught, right? And he's
Mhm.
preparing for trial and
Yeah.
he's performing to the camera, right?
Yeah.
That's the performance stage, right? But
Mhm.
then he eventually got to the stage where it was acceptance, right? And there wasn't any more deception,
Mhm.
like you were telling me with his final
Yeah.
interview, when he
Yeah.
knows he's hours from death,
Yeah.
right? So there is no deception there. So it's
No.
interesting to view that in him, right? In the
Absolutely.
interview with that knowledge. It's
Yeah.
crystal clear. Like you've seen this, and I've only seen parts of it, right? But it's even crystal
Mhm.
clear to what I've seen. There is
Yeah.
no deception in his eyes at that point whatsoever,
None.
right?
None. A lot of people argue, oh, he's just defiant to the end. He's just this. Oh, yeah, he is a psychopathic, sadistic. He was right. He was a psychopathic, lunatic, sadistic, necrophile. He was right. At the end of his life, he was a man in torment, and he was a father, right? And that's very uneasy for
Mm,
people to even entertain that
mhm,
perception, right? But it's not for me. It's not for me because I'm hugely interested in the human condition, right?
mhm,
When we'll screen it, right? We'll work on it and screen what we've
mhm,
been working on. We will show him when he is first arrested. He's 30 years old, around that age. He's in the peak of his madness. He's trying to
mm.
deceive everyone. He's got bravado. He's got this
He's
incredible
enjoying it. He's
self
enjoying the
belief.
celebrity.
He's completely, to me, then he is completely and utterly mad. He's in full on madness, right? He's not quite been caught yet for all his murders, and he's still trying to get away with it. I
Mhm,
can't describe his madness. It's fascinating to watch. But at the end of his life, in his final interview, he is a man, not all of those 10 years on death row. I think he spent the first few years on death row still, trying to fool
mm.
people, being highly manipulative, playing the game. But I think he slowly grew out of that madness. And in the final years of his life, from when he had a daughter, when he had a child, right? That's kind of like some it's almost like a divine retribution, isn't it? You know,
Mm.
you now have a child, Ted, Mr.
That
Bundy.
you will
You
never
now have a
see.
daughter. You have a daughter who you love. You love her. She's your precious daughter. Now you have to contemplate. Your victims were precious daughters, right? They were precious
Mm.
daughters
Good
to
point. Good
someone,
point.
and now you have a precious daughter, right? And I think his
Mm.
reflection, I don't know if he had full remorse. I think he had full acceptance that what he did was absolutely horrific, right? He's even
Mm.
said, people like me and people like me need to be kept away from society. For someone who to be in the throes of his psychopathic lunacy and killing rampage, to admit that is, to
Mm.
me, very interesting,
Yeah.
right? And his final interview, to me, is deeply moving and
Mm.
and and very honest. He's 15 hours from death. He
Mhm.
knows he's going to die. This interview is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's the following morning at 7 a.m. He's going to be strapped into the electric chair and killed. Right?
Mm. And he
You
knows
know?
it. He knows there's
Yeah, he
literally no
knows
chance
it.
of an appeal, right?
None, none. I mean, we could talk about the human psyche for days, Rabid, on that
Dark
interview alone.
intrigue.
Yeah, again, this is going to be controversial, I found it very moving interview, you know, and I read
Mhm.
the comments. This interview is
On the
screened
actual
under
video, yeah.
it's screened under many channels, and I've read thousands of comments to read through, and pretty much all, not all, but pretty much all, is that he was a scumbag, he deserved to die, he was the worst of the worst. And yeah, I kind of agree with that, but there's not much of anything else. There's not much of let's look at this human being,
Because
right?
most people don't want to know more.
I
They want it to be the easy.
know,
And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, right? I'm not
I
saying that they're
know,
looking for it to be an easy sort of decision to make about their opinion. I just mean that they
right?
don't want to go there. They
Yeah,
don't want it to know what darkness lay underneath that might the potential that there might be some unlucky things that happened to him, right?
yeah,
That made him a bit of a victim,
hmm,
before he did what he did.
yeah, yeah,
People
th-
just they don't
yeah.
want to go there.
I know. Well, I want to
Um,
go there. I want to go there. You
mm,
want to go there, right? I'm sure there are others who do, but it's not very predominant, is it? And I can understand that because these are so grotesque crimes, right? I
mhm.
understand all of that. I understand the emotion. I understand the intellectual argument, right?
Mhm.
Um, there's not much discussion. There's not much out there where you know, let's not just peel back 2, 3, 4 layers. Let's peel back all of them, and maybe
I agree
hundreds.
totally.
Let's do it, right?
You can only really understand and appreciate the greatest aspects of the human condition
Mm,
if you look into the darkest, worst aspects of the human condition, and
of course,
because it's
of
all part
course.
of the same thing, the same
Yeah,
the same existence. It's all part of
yeah,
existence,
yeah,
and people can just
yeah,
deny it if they want to, right? But it's other people are interested in it, people that
yeah,
just have more of a natural inclination towards psychology in general. Not
hmm,
everyone's into psychology or,
yeah,
contemplating these types of things, because it can
yeah,
be quite troubling to some people, I think, They don't
yeah,
want to unearth some realities that are out there.
yeah. I think you are a certain type of. Well, everyone's different, right? I lean towards um, deep thought, deep thinking, exploration. Um, I'm not afraid, right? I'm not afraid
Mm.
to, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong. If someone doesn't want to dig deep, fine, right? But why criticize someone who does?
Yeah.
That's what I have the issue with. You do your thing, right? You do your thing, fine. Right? I don't criticize you for it. I don't criticize anyone for their way of being, really. I mean, I might be a bit flippant, of course we do. Everybody has an opinion about everything,
We can all
but
be cheeky.
yeah, exactly. A little bit cheeky here and there. That's fine, isn't it? We express our. If you're honest, you're going to express an honest opinion, and that may be positive or negative to whoever it's aimed at, right? You
Mhm.
know, but
Mm.
as to um, a specific interest, you know, don't don't indicate to me I shouldn't be doing it, right? Not
Mm.
without giving me a decent argument, or not even an argument, but giving me decent opinion to think about, right?
Yeah.
Right? At least
Don't
at
don't
least
just give
being
me don't just give me tears.
yeah, yeah. Don't start crying and shouting at me, right? Give me something more, right? Fair enough. Then we can agree to disagree, and I can not mind. I can not mind about that, right? But when yeah, someone is putting all those tears and shouting at you, I've got every right to say stop. Stop doing that to me.
Just
Stop
don't do it
doing
in
that to
front
your,
of me.
stop doing that to yourself, right? I've got every right to. If you come at me with your tears and shouting, I'll
Mhm.
talk to anyone about anything, so long as it is talking, right?
Mm.
Fair enough, isn't it?
That's such a great line that you give there, As long as it's
Mm,
about talking, right? You'll
yeah,
talk to anyone.
yeah, I will. Yeah, and I'll accept anyone as they are, as long as you're mostly nice, right? Not everyone's 100% nice. No one is, right? But you know, I will accept anyone, however their way of being is, if they don't hurt anyone, and they're
Mm.
nice most of the time, right?
Hmm.
And that's how I operate.
Well,
Yeah,
I think we're coming to a sort of natural close, aren't we?
that was
This
very
was this.
invigorating, Rabid.
Yeah, I didn't
Very.
expect people might not believe this, but I don't think either of us had any notion we were going to bring up Chris Watts there. It just sort of happened. So,
I
but we
make it a
went there, didn't
thing
we?
not. I'd make it a thing not to mention him, so I don't know how it happened. I,
Yeah, maybe my fault.
I
I think
know
I did
not.
it.
I know not what happened, but
Yeah.
that was very invigorating. I enjoyed that. I had a little bit of a heart racing going on there. You know,
Well, yeah,
a
we
bit
having palpitations.
feisty.
Yeah,
Yeah, getting a
yeah, it
bit
was good.
feisty, wasn't it? No, I
Yeah, we got
enjoyed,
into
thoroughly
some.
enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right, Alice.
yeah.
Well, thank you again. This has been
Thank
interesting,
you, Rabid.
and
It's
I
always
look forward.
lovely. It's always lovely. And
It
of
is.
course, I look forward. Take care and good night.
Good night, everyone.